Hey, Michael, did you know that Barbie and Oppenheimer are coming out on the same day?
What? No one told me this. This wasn't a big meme that anyone was mentioning all the time.
Yeah, literally all the time. Of course, it's kind of funny. The jokes may get stale after a while, but the thing which really interests me about it is, of course, Oppenheimer, of course, is made by Christopher Nolan. And that is why we are doing The Dark Knight today. It was also made by Nolan. It's its 15-year anniversary, of course. And Barbie is made by Greta Gerwig, but of course it is funded by Warner Brothers. They are the studio behind it. And of course, Christopher Nolan had a very public spat with Warner Brothers, didn't he? After Tenet, after that was released on streaming services and not in cinemas, Nolan didn't like it, so he's jumped ship and he's now at Universal, basically making movies for them and not for Warner Brothers anymore. I think that Warner Brothers deliberately, this is my belief all along, Warner Brothers deliberately put Barbie on the same day as Oppenheimer to basically hurt Oppenheimer and hurt the promo for Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's kind of worked because it's like Barbie and Oppenheimer, because of course two radically different films. It's kind of like you can't think of one without thinking of the other,
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think they're probably going to be both very good movies. We're going to predict what Oppenheimer's going to get on Rotten Tomatoes. We would also predict Barbie, but people have already seen it and it's got like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that's no fun. Let's get into another movie which is very similar to Oppenheimer.
Barbie.
Which is The Dark Knight. Great.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the release of Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan by looking at The Dark Knight Rises, of which it is also the 15-year anniversary. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about The Dark Knight?
You know what you just did before, Michael? You call it The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
And you keep doing it, but yes. Anyway, The Dark Knight, Michael. What a great movie to talk about on the eve of your big day.
Yes.
So, The Dark Knight is a 2008 superhero film directed by Christopher Nolan from a screenplay he co-wrote with his brother, Jonathan Nolan. Based on the DC comic superhero Batman, it's the sequel to Batman Begins, which we reviewed last year, which I thought was decent, of course, and the second installment in the Dark Knight trilogy. So, the screenplay is by, of course, Jonathan Christopher Nolan. The story is by David S. Goyer as well. The movie stars Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Heath Ledger, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal. Wait, what? Was she in the first one? No, of course. She wasn't, was she? No, she was, Katie Holmes, that was it. That was Rachel Dawes in the first movie. Yes. Morgan Freeman also, of course, is in this movie. It was released on July the 18th, 2008 in the United States. So, yeah, almost exactly its 15-year anniversary. I think like Nolan likes to release his movies maybe around this time. I'm not sure, but sure seems to love those summer blockbuster releases. But anyway, Michael, can you tell me... Oh, yeah, obviously 15-year anniversary. Like I said, I'm doing it because of Oppenheimer, but can you tell me what the budget was for The Dark Knight?
80 million.
Oh, you've gone less than half.
Oh, really? Wow.
You think about, all the set pieces. I think, in general, this seems very expensive because it's a big, expansive movie. They're sort of taking a lot of time, I think, to film more than anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenes in different places.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of shit going on in this movie. The actual number is 185. So yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's quite out there.
Yeah, but of course the next question is, Michael, how much did this make at the box office?
I think this film made 900 million.
Okay, you know what? That's not a bad guess, but it actually, I think it was the first ever superhero movie to cross the billion threshold.
I was wondering if it crossed the billion, but I just wasn't confident.
Well, yes, 1 billion and 6 million is the total box office take. And so, yeah, obviously this was a massive success. This movie, it's often talked about this movie in terms of like redefining the superhero genre.
Yeah.
Indeed, like we talked with Batman Begins about how it redefined, a lot of movies, like it was a reboot, of course, Batman Begins, and it was a very dark and gritty reboot compared to the 1997 Batman and Robin, which was the previous Batman film. So yeah, 2005's Batman Begins, it was like, wow, okay, this is cool. And now, of course, Nolan kind of does it again in the sequel. And yeah, this movie I think was very influential, and just for I guess the genre as a whole, rather than a specific style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Michael, well, do you like this movie, and do you think it's the fourth best movie of all time?
Okay. I definitely do like this movie. Like, it is thoroughly entertaining. I don't think it's the fourth best movie of all time. I think that's a bit much. I do think this film, obviously, as we will get into, has thematic elements to it, which are very entertaining and interesting to talk about. I do think, in a way, this film feels sporadic and almost like it's almost like or chaotic, and I almost feel like it feels like a meta thing where it's like the Joker is obviously like this crazy character, and in this film it's kind of like, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, like, which is something which I've been aware of, like the last few times that I've watched this film. But yeah, I definitely like it. Like, obviously I like it. That just so much stuff is happening.
Yeah, so much. But yeah, that's my takeaway really, as well. I didn't think it was crazy because I'm like, how I like to watch movies. I like to go through in my mind, wait, this is what this character should be doing. Does that make sense, etc. And I think it's all quite logical, really. But it is.
See, I'm interested in that because, like, I feel like this film feels like it sort of has a lot of those like moments where it's like, could the Joker really plan all of this? Like,
well,
that was
no, that's what
I mean.
He could plan all of it. It's possible. But what really irks me is this was going to be my nitpick, I'll say.
When he says he doesn't have a plan.
Yeah, my nitpick was going to be, I don't have a plan, and he's like the guy with the most plans. It's like, and maybe he was just saying that to try and convince Harvey Dent to go crazy, but certainly this guy has the most plans in human history. Like, the amount of stuff he does is ridiculous in this movie. And the thing is,
he's gaslighting us.
Yes, exactly. It's possible to do all of that shit. It is. And that's the thing. This movie is just like the Joker doing crazy stuff over and over again, and like Batman and the cops having to react to it. But yeah, in general, I think this movie is very dense with themes. And like you said, that's what makes it interesting. It's a very interesting movie to watch. I really, and with all the craziness going on and all the shit that's jammed in here, I think it all kind of makes sense. And I just come out of this movie, I'm just really impressed. That's my impression, of this movie.
Impression.
Yeah, my impression. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just impressed, man. After watching this movie, I just sat back and was like, wow, I'm impressed. Like Nolan and his brother, well, the Nolans, and David S. Goya, regardless of what he may think about certain things, they all managed to like put all these themes and character arcs into this movie and make it like a real life crime drama. And it's just like, wow, this must have been such a hard thing to plan. It must have been so difficult to work out all these elements and make it make sense. And there's little lines here and there that don't have to be in the movie, but cool. Like, I think about Ramirez, for instance, the dirty cop who obviously kidnaps Harvey Dent because she needs her mother's medical bills paid. And it's
selfish.
Like, and it's like at the start of the movie, she has just a little line where it's like, "Oh yeah, my mother's back in hospital," and it's just like that. See that those little things. It's like, oh yeah, there was so much planning. Like everything, every motivation makes sense. That's just damn. This is impressive. It's an impressive movie. So yeah, I like it. I'm not sure it's the fourth best movie of all time. Yeah, but we'll get into that. Like I said before, my nitpick is just, he's not a guy with a plan, but like everything he does, like the hospital, where he blows up Gotham Hospital. It's like how much planning did he have to do to sneak past the security to bomb a hospital? Which, you watching the movie, he seems like he did that on a whim. Just like, because he's like, oh yeah, I want to see this guy dead because he's ruining my fun. So yeah, I'll blow up a hospital, and he already had it pre-planned, and the fucking bomb in the guy's chest as well. Fucking, kidnapping Harvey and Rachel, and just timing it perfectly so they can't, the police and the Batman can't, save both. Only Batman can save Harvey. It's just unbelievable, really. But that's the thing. It is it is possible, I guess. He just has to be a criminal mastermind, which is fine. He can be, but it's just I'm not a guy with a plan. Yes, you are. Don't lie to me. Anyway, so Batman. This is the plot now. So Batman raises the stake in his war on crime. With the help of Lieutenant Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, Batman sets out to dismantle the remaining criminal organizations that plague the streets of Gotham. The partnership proves to be effective, but they soon find themselves prey to a reign of chaos unleashed by a rising criminal mastermind known to the terrified citizens of Gotham as the Joker. So yes, again, you have like a complex plot. Well, it is kind of complex, but it also is a lot of the Joker doing shit and Batman and the rest of the Gotham PD having to react to it.
Yeah, I think
like we
sometimes
said.
when you have like a crazy character, it can be a bit easy to like. You don't necessarily have to have everything make as much logical sense as you otherwise would.
Yeah, well,
In terms of
he
motivation, I guess.
Yeah, because he wants to watch the world burn or whatever Alfred said. And exactly, so he can just be doing all this shit and he can change his motivation halfway through the movie. Because at first he's like, oh yeah, I want to kill Batman, so that's why he's doing all this shit. And then it's like, no, I don't want to kill him actually. I just want to hang around with him, because he's cool. I like him. He completes me. And maybe he always thought that from the beginning, but it's, it is kind of nice to. If you're writing this movie, I guess this is the joke is the magic ingredient because you're just like, oh yeah, he can do whatever, and it's fine, so don't worry about it. But anyway, it is considered The Dark Knight the blueprint for many modern superhero films. We're going to talk about this now, Michael.
Yes.
Particularly for its rejection of a typical comic book style in favor of a crime film. That's basically what it is. That features comic book characters. Many filmmakers sought to repeat its success by emulating its gritty or realistic tone to varying degrees of success. That's a loaded sentence.
Yeah. This guy wasn't, release the Snyder Cut kind of person.
It has been analysed for its themes of terrorism and the limitations of morality and ethics. Yeah, sometimes you got to beat the terrorists by, doing something ethically or morally wrong. Yes, which is, I think, what George Bush said.
Yeah, we don't have to charge them with any crime. Just get them to that CIA black site.
Yes, Guantanamo Bay. Yes, that springs to mind as well. So this is why and the whole fucking 24 TV show is based on that premise.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And that is what, of course, Batman is doing in this movie. And he is, of course, the hero. So, honestly, we'll look at that because it is interesting. It's not so black and white as maybe I have portrayed it just then. There is some nuance here. So, but I think in general, it's it's realistic tone, like the fact that it's a crime film. This is why audiences love this movie. This is why it broke box office records for a superhero movie. Nobody expected it to do as well as it did, and it did. And of course, Iron Man came out the same year. Yeah. And this smashed Iron Man really at the box office. But yeah, I think, the Spider-Man movies, which were the best comic book movies which preceded the Dark Knight, those were the best version of comic book style movies.
Yes.
But I think average people who aren't nerds gravitate more towards something like this. Realism is the key. It's like it's an adult movie, and a lot of people have said this, of course. But yeah, it's true. It is, like an adult crime movie with, comic book characters. And
yes.
Yeah.
Like this movie really didn't even need to be a superhero movie.
Yeah, I know. It did not. I mean, I think the fact that Batman exists as a superhero is used in this plot.
Yeah.
Is used very well, this vigilante. But yeah, I mean, there are so many moving parts, like, Lau, Ramirez, I mentioned before, the legal system, the fucking accountant, remember him?
Oh god, which accountant? Are you talking about the one who like tries to frame him? Sorry, not frame him. Blackmail him.
Yeah, but it all works. It's a really good script, and yeah, it's you consider this in comparison to, I don't know, some shitty superhero movie that came out like a couple of years later. I don't know, the fucking Green Lantern. I don't know. Yeah. Or like the Incredible Hulk. The one with.
Or like Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, that's not as bad as like. Well, maybe it is. It's kind of boring, but like the Hulk movie with Ed Norton, it's like. Yeah, this is just so much better than all of that crap. And it's like, studios now are taking superhero movies seriously, and this is what a movie which takes its comic book characters seriously, like it's a serious movie, and then studios kind of started taking comic book movies seriously as well. Of course, we haven't mentioned Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker yet.
No, yes.
And that is a major reason why this movie was successful, of course, and we'll get into that too. But yeah, so a gang of masked criminals, this is the movie now, robs a mafia-owned bank in Gotham City, each betraying and killing each other until the sole survivor, the Joker, reveals himself as the mastermind and escapes with the money. So yeah, just an amazing scene. One of the best opening scenes ever. I love it.
Yes, no, yeah, it really is solid.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. Immediately shows you who the Joker is, right from the get-go. And yeah, obviously, each of them are killing them. And, in terms of, again, we'll maybe bring this up a lot, like the Joker's plan. The fact that he, like, steps to the side so the bus hits the guy who's pointing a gun at him.
Yes. And, I mean, overall, like, obviously, one of the kind of things in here is that, like, the average criminal in Gotham's kind of just, like, a thug. Because, obviously, like, the Joker says, you need, like, a better class of criminal, and he doesn't like how it's all about the money. So it kind of works that these people he's hired Like, you can imagine he would actually have contempt.
So yeah, obviously we start off with the mafia, and that's what the first part of the movie is really. It focuses a lot on the mafia again. It's
which you mentioned how it's like a crime film, and that's one of the things I wrote down, which is really interesting. Like, and it's something I actually really like. I would like to see. This has been one of my dream projects I'd like to see, which is like a Batman TV show that's almost like 50% Batman and like 50% like Sopranos. Where it's like basically as much about the kind of.
There was a show, I think it was called Gotham.
Yeah, which I don't know if it was like that, but
centers around Jim Gordon taking on the mafia, and yeah, basically it's like a young Batman. Well, it's young Bruce Wayne, like it's Bruce Wayne when he's like 15 or whatever, and that is the point of that show, I believe.
Okay, so, that maybe does sound. But yeah, because I think that aspect is interesting.
No, it is, and that's why I gravitated to these movies more. That's like the Dark Knight, because it's like realism. Some people don't like it. Some people are like, oh yeah, make comic book movies comic booky, and I appreciate that. But like, I can really get invested in like this story and this plot, which is what I love.
And also, like his villains are quite goofy, so you need something to ground it. Otherwise, you end up with Cesar Romero's like evil scheme to stop kids going to school or something.
Okay, so the vigilante Batman, DA Harvey Dent, and Police Lieutenant Jim Gordon allied to eliminate Gotham's organised crime. They're trying to track the mobs, Mark Bill, so they can take the money. Again, this is real life crime drama stuff, isn't it? Yeah, but in a comic book movie, the DA, the mob, let's get their money, and then you have Batman thrown in. So Harvey Dent. Now we're going to talk about him. So Dent
can he be trusted?
Yes, can he be trusted? He was written as the Dark Knight's central character, serving as the centre of the battle between Batman, who believes Dent is the hero the city needs, and the Joker, who wants to prove even the most righteous people can be corrupted. Again, that's a great tug of war. That's the battle between the hero and the villain. That's very interesting, so well done there. Nolan said the title refers to Dent as equally as Batman. He considered Dent having a duality similar to Batman's, providing interesting dramatic potential. Yeah, that's true. Bruce wants Harvey to be the White Knight, so he doesn't have to keep being the Dark Knight. And I guess that is a very interesting idea, which I like.
Yes.
Would you conclude?
If he's going to be somebody who acts outside the bounds of law, it's at least slightly more forgivable if he genuinely believes that he has to and would rather he didn't have to. But also, it shows that he believes that the existing system should work, which is exactly what a billionaire would think.
Yes. Again, the Joker wants to take Harvey Dent down because he wants to, prove that White Knights don't exist, and that's the thing. He initially wanted to kill Harvey Dent, of course, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I would like a scene where he says, "Oh, I wanted to kill you, but now I realize I can do something," or not specifically
more
saying
crazy.
Yeah, saying this to Harvey Dent, maybe it wouldn't make sense, but saying it to Batman, it's like, at first I wanted to kill him, but then I realized who he was, and it's like, oh yeah, I can do something even better, which is like kill his spirit or sense of justice. Yeah,
and like there's a whole like he's like the soul of Gotham.
Yes,
so,
yes, he says that, but I'd like to know why he like changes his plan from killing him to like just taking him down like morally, So I just put White Knights don't exist, but Dark Knights do. But there's nothing racist here, of course.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yes. So Bruce Wayne, of course, supports Dent, believing his success will allow Batman to retire, so Wayne can romantically pursue Rachel Dawes, despite her relationship with Dent. I would prefer if it's more about principles, but it does seem like Bruce Wayne is motivated.
Simping.
Yeah, simping, exactly. Yeah, he does seem motivated by getting Rachel. That seems to be his primary motivation, more than like, oh yeah, Gotham's safe now without Batman. And I think that's a bit of a weaker theme. But I don't know which he believes in more. It seems like he's more interested in Rachel, but I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it. So we're going to talk about suspending democracy now, Michael.
Yes, the whole Caesar thing.
Yeah, because of course there is a scene at this restaurant. It's a very good scene. I like when Bruce says, "Oh yeah, they'll let us put two tables together. I own the place." Very very nice line.
Yes.
There are some humorous lines in there. Bruce and Harvey have this conversation in this restaurant about how the Romans, when the enemies were at the gates, would appoint one man to protect the city, and of course Rachel points out the last guy to do that was Julius Caesar, and Harvey Dent says you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And this movie, you could say it's kind of muddled in its themes, or you can interpret a lot about what
it's not as if the film has like a singular kind of like thesis statement.
Yes, it's just presenting ideas. Have you ever seen The Prestige?
I have seen The Prestige. Not necessarily so well. Or not so recently that I can exactly remember.
Yes,
the themes of it.
It was Nolan's movie from 2006.
Yes, starring Hugh Jackman, right?
Yes, and of course Christian Bale. Yes. And there are so many themes packed into that movie. It's just like fucking hell. Calm down. And this is kind of similar, but I think there's not as many themes, but it's just more open to interpretation. So this is what I think the movie is kind of saying, but maybe I'm being a bit too generous. But essentially, the inevitability of suspending democracy and having a person who is above the law, this person who has that power will become a villain. And I think it's clear in this movie that Harvey Dent would have gone down that path if he had been this like ultimate protector, this white knight of Gotham that he was seeking to be. I guess that is why Batman is special, because with that power, he doesn't become a villain, and he also sacrifices the hero title and is labelled as a villain. And of course, he doesn't deserve that. Would that be fair?
Someone says, like, we appointed Batman by acting like a bunch of dickheads. Basically because we allowed crime to like flourish. And I think like maybe that
Harvey Dent thinks that.
He says that, yeah. So I think
that's the thing. Harvey Dent idolizes Batman. Like he supports Batman. He says, no, you can't turn yourself in. And I think. Again, I'm not sure if Nolan and like Goya agree with this, but my interpretation of that is, the fact that he thinks like this, like he's like a fan of Batman,
means that he would become, like you said.
That's a bad sign. He should be like, well, I guess he's necessary, but I don't like it.
Yeah, I thought his fanboying for Batman was quite funny.
Yeah, so he was going to go down that path of becoming a villain, because if you give a lot of power to one person, then they will eventually become the villain. Apart from like if you're Batman and his, he destroys the mass surveillance device that he built, which we'll get into, he avoids compromising himself in general, responding to the Joker's chaos, and it just to show like the unique heroism of Batman. Really, indeed, at the end of the movie, he becomes more than a hero, doesn't he, Michael?
Yeah, he becomes the Dark Knight.
Yes. So Gotham's mafia bosses gather to discuss protecting their organization from the Joker, the police and Batman. The Joker interrupts the meeting and offers to kill Batman for half of the fortune their accountant Lau concealed before fleeing to Hong Kong to avoid extradition. A lot of moving parts here, isn't there? Yes. Just with this, and you when you're rewatching it, you're like, oh yeah, this Lau character, he plays quite a significant role, of course. Obviously it's a great scene because the Joker says, the Batman needs to go and Lau can't help you. He may be out of Dent's jurisdiction, but he's not out of Batman's, and he is proved right in the next scene.
Yes.
It's just very good plot progression, showing why the mobsters needed to turn to the Joker. Isn't that right, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that obviously it works with kind of setting the Joker up as like such a villain that it's like such a serious threat that he's able to basically like mock these like gangsters to their face.
Yes, again, and it's a funny scene, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, if you want to take things more seriously, here's my card. Yeah, just a great delivery, a great line, but of course that gets us onto Heath Ledger and his performance. So The Dark Knight was marketed with an innovative interactive viral campaign that initially focused on countering criticism of Ledger's casting by those who believed he was poor. And Ledger, or poor choice.
Yeah, it was poor.
Yes,
like the aristocracy really care about their comic books.
Yes, Ledger spent about a month secluding himself in a hotel room while reading relevant comic books. He developed the character's voice by making a high pitch and low pitch, which was inspired by ventriloquist performances. Yeah, he mixed a high pitch and a low pitch. Can you do an impression of the Joker? Do you want to know how I got these scars?
Hello. Do you want to know how?
That's Marge Simpson.
Do you want to know how I got these scars?
I want to know.
I was trying to do like low pitch and high pitch.
How I got these scars. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to nail it, but you did.
I thought my jokes were bad.
Yeah, that's good. That's that's better. We're getting better. So yeah, his fighting style was designed to appear improvised and erratic. Yes, which is true, but of course, as we know, he's fucking plans everything. So again, maybe it's just all performance, and of course he is a circus performer. So there you go.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like how how like Jar Jar is technically a Sith Lord and he uses drunken fist when he's fighting.
Yes, Ledger created a Joker diary containing images and elements he believed would resonate with his character, such as finding the disease AIDS humorous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, we're just like the Joker. So let's talk about the character, Michael, of the Joker. So Goya did not consider Nicholson's Joker portrayal scary, and wanted the Dark Knight Joker to be an unknowable, already formed character, similar to the shark in Jaws.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree. I think the criticism of Nicholson's character is that he's basically just like a dude wearing makeup, but he's
horny.
Yeah, exactly. He's horny, and that's the big thing that defines him in a weird way.
Yeah, which is fun, and it's a fun interpretation. But yeah, it's not as good as this interpretation. And yeah, he didn't want a cliche origin story either. Christopher and Goya did not give their Joker an origin story or narrative arc, believing it made the character scarier. Nolan described their film as the rise of the Joker. They felt the threat of cinematic villains such as Hannibal Lecter and Darth Vader had been undermined by subsequent films depicting their origins. So yes, he was depicted as an evil psychopath and anarchist who lacks reason, logic, and fear, and could test the moral and ethical limits of Batman, Dent, and Gordon. What a great villain! Just like a villain who can just really do whatever you want, and it makes sense because this is the Joker. And yeah, that's what I guess you want in a villain. Like, that's the ultimate test, testing the hero's ethical limits. That's a good idea. Rather than like testing their strength or whatever, testing their ethical limits makes things interesting.
Like, if you see that now, you would think, oh, they're just trying to do the Joker. Whereas, like, because obviously, I guess, like, in a way, the fact the character is the Joker means it works. Whereas if someone did that to, for example, Lex Luthor, you'd be like, well, what the hell are you doing? So, I think that's the logic to it.
Yeah, no, it is. They really thought, I think, very well about what they could do with Joker, this Joker character. I think the studio was probably demanding he be in the next movie. That's what I think I read. And they were like, okay, what can we do with this character? And we're going to talk about the Joker as a response to Batman in a bit. But yeah, in terms of his background, I would like it if, it was hinted he was like a war veteran. Kind of somebody who may have done horrible things in the Middle East as an American soldier.
And that'd be great.
Yes, and that would explain his skills, maybe his philosophy of like
cynicism.
chaos. Yeah, kind of stuff, yes. That would make sense. But anyway, Batman finds Lau in Hong Kong and returns him to the custody of the Gotham police. That's a very nice scene as well. His testimony enables Dent to apprehend the crime families. The bosses accept the Joker's offer, and he kills high-profile targets involved in the trial, including the judge and police commissioner, and of course almost Dent. So, it's time to go into the Joker as a response to Batman, Michael. So, I think they really nailed this, like Goya and Nolan. So they collaborated for 3 months to develop The Dark Knight's core plot points. They wanted to explore the theme of escalation and the idea that Batman's extraordinary efforts to combat common crimes would lead to an opposing escalation by criminals, attracting the Joker, who uses terrorism as a weapon. Again, it is the perfect angle for the sequel. Things are escalated. That is what you kind of want in a sequel. And of course, the Joker, as a tool for that, he is the perfect villain. It just fits so well. Like, hey, don't poke the bear, or don't shake this hornet's nest, or whatever. And the consequences of doing something like that can only really be explored, in a sequel. Because like the first movie, you won't have time. So okay, now we have an escalation, and the Joker is like, because of how fucking crazy he is, like you say, it's just perfect. It just everything fits so well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And obviously, it also works thematically. As we remember, our favorite line from the film, Joker, Robert De Niro says, they've got a problem with super rats, so now they're introducing super cats.
Again, it's the Empire Strikes Back formula, the template for all great sequels. It's like there is an escalation. Okay, you had a nice first movie, and now, okay, there's an even bigger threat, or, things are getting even more, I guess, serious or weird or crazy or deadly. And of course, this is a sequel. And I think if you look at this in the same vein as The Empire Strikes Back or like Terminator 2, in terms of just things going further than previously, because of course the Terminator in Terminator 2, he can go through metal. Right?
Terminator 2 is made from like liquid metal. Also, of course, in Terminator 2 you have twice as many Terminators, because obviously you've got the what's it called, Arnold is a term. It's Terminator versus Terminator.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So yeah, it's a great sequel, that, and this is also a great sequel. And critic Siddhant Adlakha considered the Joker an analogue for countries such as Iraq, Somalia, and Lebanon, which were targeted by US military campaigns and responded with escalation using terrorism. So this escalation. Like, Batman has changed things, as the Joker says, and it's very good for Nolan and Goya to consider what world Batman would create in a sequel, like the consequences of his actions in the first movie, and then introduce this villain, who of course would come to prominence because of that. That is just excellent, I guess, sequel producing. Yes, just an excellent idea for a sequel. Just exactly what you want. So Wayne struggles to understand the Joker's motives, but his butler Alfred Pennyworth says, "What does he say, Michael?"
Some men. Wait. Oh, all right there, my name's Michael. Some men, Master Wayne, just want to watch the world burn. I don't know. It wasn't very good at all.
Some men.
That's much better. Oh god. Some men. I don't know. I can't really do it so well.
And you're Southern as well.
I know. Yeah, crazy.
Some men just want to watch the world burn, Master Wayne. They do.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes. Even though, of course, he says moments earlier. Not moments earlier. He was talking about Burma, right?
Yeah.
This.
Should have said some men just want to watch the world burn.
Well, he stole a ruby the size of a child's penis. I don't know, what did he say?
it was like the size of like an apple. It was like something like that.
Yeah, ruby the size of an apple. And of course, what he says later is, "How did they catch this bandit? We burnt the forest down, sir."
So they're the ones who did the burning, of course. Yes.
Well, exactly. Yes. Some men want to watch the world burn. How did we catch them? We burnt the forest down. Wait. Oh, that looks like a nice little parallel there, doesn't it?
And yeah, like it kind of shows how, like, basically in a way, like the people, like I guess it's kind of like talking about how, like, if the Joker lived in a world where there were like no rules, then he wouldn't be doing any of the things he does. The only reason he's doing it is to get a reaction out of authority.
Yeah, well, I'd also say it's another example of escalation. So the Joker escalates, and so Batman, of course, escalates later on, doesn't he? Batman escalates with his mass surveillance thing, and it's the same like in Burma. It's like, okay, this criminal's gone further than before, so we're going to fucking burn the forest down. And of course, okay, this criminal has done something wrong. These boys in Burma, these soldiers, did they do something wrong burning the forest down? I'd say yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get to that later with the surveillance thing. So, the Joker's philosophy now, Michael. We're going to talk about that. Yes, he hates liberals, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's that video called? It's like the Joker owns liberals or something. Great. So anyway, the Joker's philosophy. The Joker represents an ideological deviancy. He does not seek personal gain and causes chaos for its own sake, setting a towering pile of cash ablaze to prove everything burns. Unlike Batman, the Joker is the same with or without makeup, having no identity to conceal and nothing to lose. Boscailion wrote, "The residents and criminals believe in a form of order and rules that must be obeyed. The Joker deliberately upends this belief because he has no rules or limitations." Exactly, another great counter to Batman. He likes chaos. Batman, of course, doesn't. There you go, easy. And yeah, it's a great use of the Joker character. He is the wild card, as it were. I mean, again, that if you want a character, again, talk about escalation. If you want a character to escalate things in a sequel, this is the guy who does it, because literally, like, that is what the Joker in a pack is, isn't it? It's the wild card, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like this. It is like fucking Goya and Christopher Nolan and the creator of the Joker character, like, came up with this movie, because it's such a neat little idea that fits so perfectly. Yes.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but like, this movie is, like, I think quite heavily inspired by The Killing Joke. And I know that in The Killing Joke, is the Joker basically admits that he likes to make up stories about his origin. Like, that's where that thing comes from, about, like, how he's telling, like... So, yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Michael. I'm going to tell you what a professor thinks about the Joker now.
Oh,
okay. Cool. So, Professor Charles Bellinger considered him a satanic figure who repels people from goodness and tempts them with things they supposedly lack, such as forcing Batman to choose between saving Dent, who is best for the city, and Rachel, who is best for Wayne. The Joker aims to corrupt Dent to prove anyone, even symbols, can be broken. In their desperation, Dent and Batman are forced to question their own limitations. And yeah, I think in general, Batman...
your limitations, Master Wayne.
Yeah, Batman... he becomes more of a hero, I guess, throughout this movie, because like he cared a lot about Rachel. He wanted to maybe drop the Batman thing for Rachel, and I said that's a bit of a weak theme. But again, it shows like his character arc. He still needs to grow as a hero. He should have gone and saved Dent because he was best for the city and sacrificed Rachel. And at the end, he makes that sacrifice about becoming a more than a hero and allowing the city to hate him. And of course, in the middle of the movie, he gave up that Batman mantle because he did not want to have the whole city hate him, because that was on his conscience. But yeah, anyway, of course, the Joker, states to Batman, what does he state?
Is this like the line where we're talking about, like, the civilized people?
Yes.
They'll eat each other.
Dropped at the first sign of trouble. Yeah. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. You'll see, I'll show you, when the chips are down. These civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve. There you go.
Yeah.
It's just,
Good line.
I think, yeah, it is a great line, great writing. I think that is a philosophy, again, the devil Michael would share in terms of, him being a satanic figure. And I think, honestly, in terms of who the Joker is, that is the best comparison I have seen. That the Joker is the devil. He wants to watch the world burn because I guess that is similar to hell as well, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that hell, people burn in hell, the world burns in hell.
I happen to know that in like old Jewish theology, Satan was thought of as kind of like the prosecution in like a court trial, and like basically his like job was to argue that humanity's evil, because like the story of Job in the Bible, like basically how like Job gets like tested to see like how good is he by like his whole life being terrible, and obviously I guess the person who like pushes that is Satan. Satan's like, oh, hey God, Job seems like a godly man, but what if you took away all his stuff? Which is exactly what the Joker would do
to Harvey Dent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like basically this person seems like a righteous person, but would they still be righteous if everything was taken away from them?
Yeah, and the answer, he tries to do the same with Batman, and the answer is yes, he would.
Yeah, exactly.
He would.
Yeah.
And Batman becomes more of a hero by the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
get wrecked.
Yes. So, or does he? We'll get onto that at the end. But anyway, and Dent, I guess, is to further this comparison, expand on this point of the Joker being the devil. Dent could be like a fallen angel, against the White Knight and all of that. But he can't corrupt Batman. Maybe this is going too far. He's like Jesus,
Well, that's when you get into the whole Zack Snyder thing. I guess like maybe part of it is because like obviously he likes.
No. That's Superman. That's what Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Zack Snyder thinks he's Superman because he's cool.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, basically. No. But
I'm being a bit harsh there.
I was going to say that like part of it is obviously the big thing is like corrupting the idea of a symbol. Like Dent's like a good symbol, whereas of course the thing with Batman isn't like a good symbol of like hope and things like that, which means that you can't really corrupt him. So like basically, I guess it's showing how clothing oneself in an almost kind of negative aesthetic actually means that you're not as vulnerable to people trying to kind of take down your character.
But he's still. But that's the thing though. He still has that. He's still a hero, obviously.
Yeah.
And he's still he still has that morality, which the Joker, like, he's trying to. That's why, of course, when at the end of the movie Batman pushes him off that like building, and the Joker's laughing because it's like, yes, I've won. He's gonna murder me. That means I have corrupted him. I win, and he's disappointed when he loses.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I think you are right about Batman clouding himself in negativity, but yeah.
I think also like that random guy who like made the point. Like I actually kind of think that guy who basically knew that the Joker wanted to be beaten up and would enjoy being beaten up, and I was like, I'm just going to have to enjoy it more. I actually thought that was a pretty cool line for like a quite random character.
Yeah, but then the Joker gets the upper hand.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I didn't like that part. I kind of wanted that guy. I just wanted that guy to become the hero. Like he beats him up and just like defeats the Joker single-handedly.
Well, again, it's like this is what the Joker does. He's like, manipulates people, kind of like the devil. But he can't do it to Batman. And Batman, he sacrifices himself. He's no longer a hero. He's an outcast. And isn't that what Jesus did, Michael?
Yeah, true.
So, yeah.
Oh yeah, because like so there is some crown of thorns. Like a lot of humiliation and mockery, things like that.
Yeah. So that's what he does because he can take it. Because again, this movie really. That's the thing, when you're watching it, it's all about the Joker, and it's like, oh yeah, Batman's kind of pushed to the side. But when you really analyze it, you're like, oh yeah, Batman becomes like a superhero, And I don't mean to make that a pun, because he's a hero at the start, like he's a good guy, and then he becomes like Jesus, like at the end,
so he becomes
like
more of a hero,
more of a hero, a super hero, a hyper hero. Anyway, so Bruce Wayne is going to turn himself in because he can't handle being a villain, and like we said, that's his character arc. He understands that he can be more than a hero, a Dark Knight by the end of the movie, but not right now. So Dent claims he's Batman to lure out the Joker because he doesn't want to see Batman put in jail because he's a Batman fanboy. The Joker attacks the police convoy transporting him. Dent is as committed as Batman, isn't he? And he'll get his fall from grace. But yeah, that scene with the Joker flipping the truck is so good, and like Batman avoiding avoiding Joker.
Yeah,
not running him down.
Although I feel again, if he was a really good hero, if he was a superhero, if you will, he would have been able to avoid the Joker without also nearly killing himself.
Yeah, that was a bit dumb. Yeah. But again, it's symbolic, of what he's willing to do, to not sink to the Joker's level.
Yes.
So yeah, I get that. But yeah, the set piece though with the truck flipping, that's great. No CGI there, was it?
Oh yeah, is that? I mean, I would imagine it was enhanced with CGI. That's what I've heard.
No.
Oh, so it wasn't even.
No.
It was literally because I knew it was practical, but it was like 100% practical. Didn't even.
I
didn't
believe
even
so.
sweeten
Yeah,
it.
because there's no explosions. It's just cool that Nolan did that.
Yeah, it is cool.
Uh,
Kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't quite as cool as the scene in Terminator 3 where they flip a truck over.
But yeah, Jim Gordon isn't dead, by the way, which is kind of pointless, but whatever.
Yeah, I guess it was just so that he couldn't be caught, or he wasn't at risk.
The Joker didn't target him though, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. It's kind of like it's a bit like almost self-important. He's like, oh, don't worry, everyone. I'll make sure that nobody knows that I'm alive. And it's like, Jim, the Joker doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah, like the Joker doesn't know your name, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. So at the police station, Batman interrogates the Joker, who says he finds Batman entertaining and has no intention of killing him, having deduced Batman's feelings for Rachel. Again, that's an incredible thing to do from the Joker,
Yeah.
but if he's a criminal mastermind and he's used to interrogating people, then maybe. The Joker reveals she and Dent are being held separately in buildings rigged to explode.
Yeah, how does he... I want to
Go
know
on.
this. Okay, he knew exactly how long it would take Batman to get there, and how long it would take anyone else who Batman's in to get to a different place, so that he could time exactly when he told them. That just seems like that's pretty crazy, right? Like, I'm not... Yeah.
No, it is. That's why I mentioned it before, because
Oh,
it
yeah,
is
you did.
crazy. It's unbelievable. So yes, Batman races to save Rachel while Gordon and other officers go after Dent, but they discover the Joker has switched their positions. Rachel is killed while Dent's face is burned on one side. Yeah, such a great idea, and the Joker's trying to prove Batman is not this, I guess, hero.
Well, he does then
that-
repeat that whole "you've got to choose" situation. So he needs to work on that. He needs to come up with. And to be fair, he also stole that from the Green Goblin, right? Like little kids versus Mary Jane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's the Spider-Man
I
thing,
know,
but yeah, again, this is a nice, because philosophically in this movie, Dent's meant to be better for the city, and Rachel's meant to be Batman's love. But of course, in reality, I don't think Dent is that great for the city. And hey, Rachel had a lot to offer. She was a very good lawyer.
that's true. Yeah.
So the Joker escapes custody, extracts the fortune's location from Lau, and burns all of it, killing Lau in the process. He really can do everything, can't he? So the Joker meets with a disillusioned Dent, persuading him to take the law into his own hands and avenge Rachel. Dent defers his decision-making to his two-headed coin, killing the corrupt officers and mafia involved in Rachel's death. Do you want to shall we go into Harvey Dent's fall, Michael?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, because this is interesting. For me, I watch Harvey Dent in this movie and I think, oh yeah, this guy's like a fascist, a Batman fanboy. He shouldn't be like that much of a fanboy, but like Nolan and Aaron Eckhart and Goy was like, oh no, this is a good man. This was a really good man who was the best of Gotham, who the Joker turned into someone evil. I'm like, he seemed very close to like the edge. But anyway, let's get into it. So, Dent's corruption suggests he is a proxy for those looking for hope because he is as fallible and susceptible to darkness as anyone else. Yes, this can be seen in his use of a two-headed coin to make decisions involving others, eliminating the risk of chance by controlling the outcome in his favour, indicating losing is not an acceptable outcome for him. Yes, indeed. So again, that's another piece of evidence there. Once Dent experiences a significant traumatic event in the loss of Rachel and his own disfigurements, he quickly abandons his nobler former self to seek his own form of justice. So yeah, again, seek his own form of justice. He becomes basically I think he is a fascist, basically. And, people like Caesar, again, to mention the Roman thing, they want to be heroic, right?
Yeah.
But those are the kind of people who, they're very close to, taking the law into their own hands and, being above the law. And that's the thing.
Yeah. It's like Daenerys in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Or Wilson in Utopia, where, of course, Lee famously says, you're a true believer. It's not that you couldn't take life. I reckon you could take billions. You just have to convince yourself it was necessary.
Yeah. No. And yeah, he believes he is, like this incredible, form of justice, I guess. And he likes that, and that's what I get from the character.
And he likes the crowd too. Like, remember how he has that little one-liner in the courtroom?
Yeah,
he's like, "I recommend you buy American if you want to kill me."
Yeah, no, he is this heroic figure, but of course anybody who has this, well, he has a hero complex, that's the thing. And people who have that complex, obviously that comes with some negative things, like being very power hungry. And, that's the thing. Nolan and Goya, I'm perceiving Dent very negatively here in this movie, and Nolan and Goya, I don't think they would. Like, yeah, that's the thing. He threatens the guy who the Joker got from Arkham Asylum, and and that's the thing. He wasn't going to kill him, but like he was doing something very, very bad for like a DA, and that was before Rachel was killed, of course. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's like I thought that was interesting.
But that's the thing you read on Wikipedia about, fucking Harvey Dent. I was like, oh, he's a good man. It's like how, and that's what I'm talking about with the politics of this movie and because you can interpret a lot of things. I look at this movie. Of course, you can interpret a lot of things in this movie because the movie doesn't really give a clear side, and this is one of the cases where that's true because. Honestly, I look at Harvey Dent in this movie and I think, oh yeah, this guy is, he thinks he's like Batman, or he could be Batman, but no, he's not Batman. He has some crucial characteristics which show, again, like, you give too much power to someone like this, he will abuse it. And indeed he of course does. But, I don't think that Nolan and Goya want him to, based on just what I read off Wikipedia, want him to be perceived like that. They see him as a really good guy. He was corrupted rather than somebody who was,
pretty bad. That as we all know, we're big fans of the Batman animated series, which I assume is probably a little bit closer to the comics. And in that, Harvey Dent was Two-Face before he got physically injured. Because before he got physically injured, he already had basically, I guess split personality, where he would sometimes become crazy and beat people up and basically not be a good person. And then at the end of that episode where he's first introduced, that's when he gets the injury to the side of his face.
Yeah.
So I think I'm pretty much in agreement with you.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously his coin is scarred on one side, introducing the risk of chance, and he submits himself to it. According to English professor Daniel Boscawen, who I mentioned before, Dent is not broken. He believes in a different form of justice in a seemingly unjust world, flipping a coin because it is unbiased, unprejudiced, and fair. Yeah, he no longer has that belief in justice, like no right or wrong. Okay, that's so. Yeah, it's the most basic form of justice, I guess. Like flipping a coin. Yes, and that's what he's been reduced to. So yeah, his principles have been washed away. So yeah, I kind of like that element, but yeah, again, it's how you get to it, maybe, and his character beforehand. Yeah.
I think it's considering again, all Batman characters do feel kind of gimmicky and dumb. So this was a pretty decent way of getting to that conclusion.
Yes. So combating terrorism now, Michael. We're going to talk about this. This is going to be fun. So according to historian Stephen Prince, The Dark Knight is about the consequences of civil and government authorities abandoning rules in the fight against terrorism. Several publications criticize The Dark Knight for a perceived endorsement of necessary evils. That's a great phrase. Necessary evils, such as torture and rendition. Author Andrew Klavan said Batman is a stand-in for then US President George W. Bush and justified the breaching of boundaries of civil rights to deal with an emergency, certain that Batman will re-establish those boundaries when the emergency is passed. Well, he does, to be fair.
Yeah.
Indeed, when Dent ineffectually attempts to torture Joker's henchmen, Batman does not condemn the act, only being concerned about public perception if people discover the truth. This conveys the protagonist's gradual abandonment of their principles when faced with an extreme foe. I'd say maybe he regains those principles at the end, but we'll get into that later. Klavan's interpretation was criticised by some publications that consider The Dark Knight anti-war, proposing society must not abandon the rule of law to combat lawlessness or risk creating the conditions for escalation. So yeah, that's what I mean by the fact that you can, there's interpretation to this movie, because I saw some discourse on Twitter about the fucking, the Dark Knight shows that a surveillance state is good to deal with terrorists. That's what Nolan is saying, and they were because there's been speculation about the politics of Oppenheimer, whether Nolan will condemn the dropping of the atomic bomb on Japan, or he'll be like, you know what, it was a horrible thing to do, but these extraordinary circumstances, this war with Japan meant that it was the right thing to do. And that, of course, is very similar to The Dark Knight, supposedly, with this mass surveillance that Batman has, and indeed, like the torturing of the Joker's henchmen, Batman, beating up the Joker and all of that shit, that's kind of torture. where it's like, oh yeah, extraordinary circumstances require us to do something we don't want to do, even though we know it's wrong, but it's kind of right. And so it shows that yes, necessary evils such as maybe the dropping of an atomic bomb on Japan, sometimes are necessary. That's what maybe this movie's saying. That's what maybe Oppenheimer will say. We'll wait and see. But yeah, but it is down to interpretation because obviously, society must, if a society abandons the rule of law, which of course Batman kind of does, just the concept of him, then conditions will escalate, and you'll get something worse.
I feel like several kind of stories about Batman have done this thing and tried to introduce this element, but the problem is that because they still ultimately have to come down on the side of being pro-Batman because they are Batman films, they end up being kind of fascist. Like the animated movie of the what's it called? The Dark Knight Returns is like a good example of this, where it's kind of like they have like characters being like, oh, Batman's fascist, Batman's fascist. It's like a big thing they like have, and like they're introducing it to be like, oh look, we're being like thematic and stuff. But the problem is, the film can't really end because it's still a Batman film. It can't really end with like, oh yeah, Batman's terrible, so we got rid of him. Nor can it meaningfully like challenge the idea that Batman's fascist, because all the points they're making like are basically he beats up people without like a fair trial and things like that, and basically acts as an autocrat. So of course they basically just have to be like, Batman's fascist, but also he's awesome and it's fine.
Yes. Well, anyway, let's talk more about this because, is the surveillance state good, Michael? Because obviously Batman employs an invasive surveillance network by co-opting the phones of Gotham citizens to locate the Joker, violating their privacy. Adler described this act as a militaristic fantasy, like dropping an atomic bomb, in which a significant violation of civil liberties is required through the means of advanced technology to capture a dangerous terrorist, reminiscent of the 2001 Patriot Act. Lucius Fox threatens to stop helping Batman in response, believing he has crossed an ethical boundary, and although Batman agrees these violations are unacceptable and destroys the technology, the film demonstrates he could not have stopped the Joker in time without it. I think the point this movie makes, you could argue it's messy or it's deliberately left up to interpretation, but I think what it's saying is like going back to the Romans, you have one guy, wielding too much power, in extraordinary circumstances, and doing something they should not do, right?
Yeah.
But the risk is always that if you are not Batman and say they are George Bush or maybe even Harvey Dent, abandoning the rule of law means creating a society that is less democratic in the long term. I think that's what this movie is saying. Because Lucius Fox resigns, or he threatens to resign, of course, and then obviously Batman destroys it. So it's like, hey, look, we can do a crazy thing, like in extraordinary circumstances, violating all of Gotham's privacy, creating this militaristic fantasy of a mass surveillance network. But yet, then you look at, say, Alfred, who, going back to burning down the forest in Burma, and acts probably similar to watching the world burn, Dent's actions in this movie. It's possible to have someone go too far with this power, to as the phrase goes, fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
And obviously Alfred in Burma literally did that. Yes, well, I guess the point is, like, it's okay if the person who has this power, like, gives it up. That's fine. That means it's acceptable. But how do you know who's going to be able to wield this power?
Well, it's interesting because obviously, like, Rome was mentioned, and the thing about Rome is actually there were several people in Roman history who got made dictator in like those times of like serious kind of violence, and then they did willfully give up. I think there's like that famous example of the guy who was made dictator 6 times, and then he retired and like just went to like farm olives or something. And like the Romans,
so it is possible.
But
it is
then,
possible.
Of course, it went out, but then the last one was Caesar, and like it only takes one person to be like, oh, actually, no, I'm not going to give this up, and suddenly you've got a problem.
Yes, and of course, I think of also George Washington.
Oh yeah, that too.
Deciding not to be president for life. He just gave up the presidency because he was like, yeah, I think that's probably the right thing to do. And he was obviously this incredible hero who could have become like a dictator. But yeah, no, that is, again, it's interesting, and that's why I don't think this movie is black and white. I would be interested to hear like what Nolan and Goya were to say about it, because I believe Goya is quite right wing. So he may have a certain interpretation that yes, no, what Batman did in this movie is very good. But I'm saying I hope there's nuance there, Michael. I hope there's more nuance there, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So as panic grips the city, the Joker reveals 2 evacuation ferries, one carrying civilians and the other prisoners, that are rigged to explode at midnight unless one group sacrifices the other. But to the Joker's disbelief, the passengers refuse to kill one another. Batman subdues the Joker but refuses to kill them. Before the police arrest the Joker, he says, although Batman proved incorruptible, his plan to corrupt Dent succeeded. So we're going to talk about the Joker's defeat now, Michael. So I think, the ferry scene can be seen as, the Joker's true defeat, demonstrating he is wrong about the residents turning on each other in extreme scenarios. According to writer David Chen, this demonstrates individually, people cannot responsibly handle power, but sharing the responsibility, there is hope for a compassionate outcome. I guess, that would make sense. The movie doesn't explicitly state that.
Yeah. Although they do have a vote, and the people vote to, kill them.
Yeah, people did actually vote to blow up the other boat. Yeah.
So democracy's bad.
So so democracy's bad. Yes.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again.
So
democracy simply doesn't work.
So maybe the Joker wasn't that correct. People just lacked the moral courage to. It's not moral courage, It's just the courage to do it. So and it shows again the Joker. I guess not everyone is like him. He's not ahead of the curve, even though when you actually think about it, maybe that's not the case.
Actually, it could be a point about I don't know. I don't think this was intentional at all. But interestingly, it's interesting with regards to anonymity. It almost is the exact opposite to how, thematically it doesn't make any sense, really. But it's obviously in a vote, people can kind of anonymously say, I'll blow these people up. But when it comes to actually having to do it yourself and, be known as the person doing it, you're less likely to do it. So there's kind of an accountability aspect. But of course, that doesn't really work because Batman has no accountability. Yes, well, that's the thing. Maybe this plays into the scene. Maybe we're giving the movie too much credit. But accountability is absolutely crucial. Accountability is necessary. And when accountability doesn't exist, Batman, you better hope he's a virtuous person. But as long as accountability is there, you should be okay. But of course, the dictator in Rome, to go back to that, they didn't have accountability, did they? No, yeah.
No. Did the soldiers in Burma have accountability?
Probably not.
They could probably do what they wanted. So, after the Joker succeeds in taking down Dent, does he corrupt Batman, Michael? Because here's the thing, Batman holds on to his morals and does not kill the Joker. But he is forced to break his code by pushing Dent to his death to save an innocent person. Yeah, it always did seem kind of contrived. I'm not going to lie, it seemed like one of those things where it's sort of it's hard to believe that Batman, considering all of the people he fights and all the times he's able to save the day without killing someone, that it just so happens this one time he wasn't able to save the day without killing Harvey Dent. It is a bit... Yes. Batman chooses to become a symbol of criminality by taking the blame for Dent's crimes and preserving him as a symbol of good, maintaining the hope of Gotham's residents. So, it is a noble lie to ensure the defeat of the Joker, which can be seen as heroic, even if it is lying, because, it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good. The greater good. Yes. And that is the theme reoccurring again, not telling the truth or doing something you shouldn't do, like the mass surveillance thing, for the greater good. And obviously Wayne's butler Alfred also commits a noble lie, concealing Rachel's choice of Dent over Wayne, in the letter she wrote. And that would, that's for the greater good, I guess. And, the surveillance thing, maybe it's wrong, but it's for the greater good. However, according to Professor Martin Fradley, among others, Batman's noble lie and Gordon's support of it is a cynical endorsement of deception and totalitarianism. It's an interesting thought, really, Michael, is not being truthful to the Gotham public and letting them lionize a murderer. Does that mean that Batman has been corrupted? Do you know what I compare it to, Michael? This scenario. It's like the Jeremiah Springfield episode of The Simpsons. I was literally thinking that myself. Oh my god, I actually had that in my head. It's is the truth better, or should people be allowed to be ignorant if it's for the greater good? What is the bigger evil there? What do you think? I think generally speaking, you've got to hold to the truth. I suppose it is in some ways a bit of a tough one, because I feel like what you should do is, certainly in the long term, I don't think you should have a long-term strategy that involves a lie. But in this case, so I'd almost be I feel like they should be okay, for now we'll just pretend, and then later on we'll try and work out a way of making it so it becomes clear. But I don't know, it's not so easy, is it? No, but that's the thing. The authoritarian actions committed by Gotham in the name of Dent weren't known until the next movie, although Batman endorsed those actions. But again, that's another movie. Batman wants to save the soul of Gotham. Of course, the Joker wants to prove it can be corrupted and all that. And that's, of course, Harvey Dent, really. And he has to, even though, he's not really that that much of a white knight, but whatever. And he has to lie and do things that he knows are wrong, Batman. And he and Jim Gordon and Lucius Fox can be trusted to do that, but like Harvey Dent, for instance, can't be. And again, it's just another case of like with this movie, it's like it's. I think it's trying to be simple. It's trying to be simple and say, no, Batman is heroic. It's not trying to present a dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's trying to present this dilemma that I am presenting right now. I don't think it is trying to do. But it is interesting to consider this dilemma because it does bring up, like we are discussing what happens at the end of this movie, and it does bring up an interesting dilemma. But I don't think like Nolan and like Goya want it to be a dilemma.
They want it to be too like obvious that he's doing just the right thing that clearly you would want to do.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and I think you could argue it's the same thing again with, the mass surveillance thing. It's like, and the character of Batman in general, like as a vigilante, has he escalated things? It could be a dilemma, that you think about, but like I just this is kind of my conclusion, to these themes. I think Nolan and Goya don't want it to be up for interpretation, even though it can be, and even though we've discussed it, I think they want it to be more black and white. And it's like, the mass surveillance thing was the right thing to do, as long as it was done once by Batman. Even though, again, like somebody wielding this power, like you said, it just takes one person. And then that can have disastrous consequences for a society. So it's more nuanced than I think this movie. I hope there is more nuance than I think there is, but I'm not sure that's the case. Would you agree with that conclusion, I guess?
I think I would, I think I would basically agree,
Yeah, so anyway, let's conclude properly now. You go first.
Right, yeah. So this movie is, definitely good. Solid action, interesting plot, interesting characters. And also, I think it's to its credit that it takes this kind of like goofy idea of, superheroes, which can, be a bit silly sometimes, and does something different with it. I think like you, I do agree there's something to be appreciated in, the Spider-Mans out there, the Ralph Bakshi ones that are like, just know what they are as comic book movies. But this is also entertaining as well. And it is nice to basically have a crime drama featuring superheroes. My main criticisms, I guess, would be one, I didn't mention this, but it has come out, I think, before. I'm not like as much of a fan of the kind of almost like omnipotent, omniscient, like supervillain trope. I suppose like with the themes, it is interesting, but I also think the film, I think sometimes I prefer a film to have a bit more of like a thematic thing that it's saying rather than just kind of questions it's exploring. And I think insofar as this film does have a thing it's saying, it's kind of, I don't know, not necessarily a statement I would agree with. So that all that stuff kind of takes away from it. It's still thoroughly entertaining.
What are you going to give out of 10?
I was just about to say, I'm going to give it a high 8.
Because I think this movie is very impressive. Like, fuck it, I'm going to give it a 9. It's going to get a 9 out of 10 for me.
That's fair.
Yeah, because it's like, that's what I think overall, like in terms of just filmmaking, it's a captivating movie. I've watched this movie probably more times than any other movie, just because I really enjoy it.
Because it's long.
Yeah. Well, it's not that long,
No, yeah.
But that's the thing. There are better movies that exist, but it's just a really enjoyable movie. I just like watching all the pieces, and it's very well thought out in terms of what all the characters do. Apart from maybe the Joker having just this omnipotent power, like you said, and in terms of the themes, again, you could say, I do wonder if Nolan and Goya, like, if it's very black and white. Or it's like, actually, no, there is some nuance there. There's some things to consider. There's dilemmas here, and it's up to the audience to but the fact that Batman, like, the movie, I think, wants to show at the end that, like, Batman has not been corrupted by the Joker, and the Joker has lost. So there you go. So, and therefore, his actions throughout the movie, particularly in the second half when he's this ultimate hero, are all justified. And the necessary evils are exactly that. They are necessary evils. Like, and again, a big clue, I mentioned this before, was the Harvey Dent character. It's like, you just read on Wikipedia. You can do that if you want, Michael. Like, what Nolan and Goya and Eckhart say about Harvey Dent, it's like, there's no really nuance in terms of, like, his original character before Rachel dies. It's like, oh no, he's this hero, he's this white knight. It's like, well, he's okay, that gives me pause and makes me think, these interesting thematic points you bring up, like, they're not as interesting as they are interesting to discuss, of course, but of course, like we always say, Michael, intentions matter when making a movie. Intentions definitely matter. But again, it's kind of unknowable. But 9 out of 10, Michael. Now it's time to predict what we think about Oppenheimer, what it's going to get on Rotten Tomatoes. So have you got an idea in your head?
I suppose I do.
Wow, I suppose you do. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Shall we say it?
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
92.
Okay. 95 for you, 92 for me. So again, we've been talking a lot about the themes in this movie, necessary evils. It'll be interesting to say whether Nolan's just like, yep, it was a necessary evil to drop that nuke and kill thousands of civilians. How many people died in those bombings, Michael?
Okay, no, yeah. You know what? It was 200,000 in total.
So I just wonder at the end of Oppenheimer if Oppenheimer is going to say, I am death, destroyer of worlds. But like the very virtuous character in the movie who's been good all along says, no, Oppenheimer. Whatever, Robert, that's his first name.
You're the hero this country does. Maybe not the hero this country deserves, but the hero it needs right now.
Yes, you may have become Death Destroyer of Worlds, but you know what? It was a necessary evil, pal. Gives him a pat on the back. Yeah. I hope that's not the case, but it may well be. So yeah, what are we doing next week, Michael?
Next week we are doing the another very misunderstood character, the Devil and Miss Jones.
Yes, The Devil in Miss Jones. What a great movie. The Dark Knight to The Devil in Miss Jones. So join us for that next week. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke, and thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.